I was on stage on the verge of depression and having like a breakdown, 100% breakdown, because I just stuffed everything inside constantly. And I was, you know, in our culture, we're taught, especially in the African-American culture, you're taught that's a man, like just stuff all that stuff down and deal with it, you know what I mean, suck it up. I'm a peacemaker, I'm the third child peacemaker, I want everybody to be happy, so I started performing to make everybody happy and my whole relationship with the Lord started as a performance to make everybody happy with who I was.
Now, let me ask you this, because I don't want to cut you off, because I do want to continue to hear the story, but is there anything, because I'm thinking about the parent who's watching this right now, and I'm wondering if there's anything mom or dad could have done to take that pressure off you. Because I remember about mom and dad that one of the great things about them was that they were constantly reminding us, you do not have a responsibility to the church. You have a responsibility to us as your parents and to the Lord, but we are not putting the pressure on you to be something for the church. So I remember that they tried as best they could to take that pressure off of us, but is there anything from your vantage point that would have been even more helpful for you to just feel free to be who you were and not be just a little miniature Tony Evans?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because you mentioned what our parents did, and I because the pressure didn't come from them. So there was a lot of times my mom would set me down and go, no, you know you don't have to be your dad. She would say those words to me, you know you don't have to be your dad, right? I just feel like a lot of things were out of their control, honestly. Like a lot of the pressure that was coming in was just out of their control. It's like, we're the pastors of a church, so you're gonna go to that church, and that's just gonna happen there, you know?
Yeah. People mean well, but they're saying things to you that are putting the load on.
But I'm just built different. Out of the four, there's 4 kids in our family. Out of the 4 of us, Crystal, our oldest sister, is the logical, analytical one. Priscilla's Miss Personality. Growing up, she used to get in so much trouble for talking all the time. But now,
I don't recall that.
Yeah, now it all just makes a lot of sense, and so people want to hear her talk all the time. And I'm the emotional one. So everything in my life, my father always says, and we'll talk about this later, your emotions can't be the engine, they have to be the caboose of your life, or you'll be all over the place. And growing up, my emotions were the engine. So I was easily affected by things. So a lot of it was intangible, and I can't say they could have done this and it would have been better, because the way that I was built wasn't something you could grab onto, you know.
Do you think that Dad, because, started out with the 2 girls, so it was Crystal and then me. So he had 2 daughters, and then finally he has a son.
Right.
Do you think that Dad had just intrinsically these visions of a football player? You know, Dad's into football. I mean, sports is his thing. Or even the next pastor at the church or ministry. Do you think Dad had a vision for you that he had to shift as you grew up and he realized you were wired differently than maybe what his expectation was for his firstborn son?
I think he had a vision, but he wasn't holding me fast to that. I think every dad, when they see a kid that's the stature of me, is like, he's gonna be a football player, he's the linebacker, you know, that whole thing. But that wasn't I don't think he was married to that at all. You know, just every dad, I think, and Texas dads, you know, y'all want to go, Friday Night Lights is a thing here, you know what I mean? That's a thing. So, and I stopped. I didn't mention our younger brother, he is the football player and the preacher, but he doesn't have any of the stuff that I have as it relates to pressure in my life. It didn't affect him like it did me. And he was raised exactly the same way that I was. So it's, you know, it's variables, but the book, I'm obviously talking about my specific journey and how these things affected how growing up in the home that we grew up in, although it's an amazing home, how there were moments where I struggled. I really did struggle, and I wanted the audience to know the truth about that in this book.
So, you know, did you feel like you were overlooked in any way? Because you mentioned in the book that you were an easy kid. And you were an easy kid. You know, we all had our little things that Mom and Dad had to look after us for certain reasons in different ways. Probably they would say you were the most laid back and the most easy in the sense that you just seemed to entertain yourself.
Right.
So in that, with everybody else needing to be attended to, did you feel overlooked?
Yeah, I would say unintentionally overlooked. Because overlooked, I mean, this is my family sitting right here, but I'm a very vicious protector of my family. So I don't ever want to say anything that comes off like my parents overlooked us, because they didn't at all.
Right.
But I was unintentionally overlooked because you couldn't see the needs I had tangibly. You couldn't see them. Like everybody else had tangible things. Like Priscilla gets in trouble all the time. We deal with her. You know what I mean? Like that was a thing. So, And there were other needs with our other siblings also, but mine just went unattended for longer. But our mom said this to me one time, and I'll never forget it. She said, while you were wondering why don't they give me the extra attention that my siblings get, they were praying and thanking God that we have an easy child. That was happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So that should be, what can you do with that?
Yeah.
You know, what can you do with that? Except now in my life, God has used a lot of that stuff. I was a very sensitive person. So all that has led me to what I get to do now.
And why don't you think that you allowed those needs to be known? In other words, because we were asked those kinds of questions. We were asked, are you okay? What do you need to talk about? Those were questions we were asked. So was there any reason specifically why you chose not to divulge how you were really feeling?
Because the way I programmed myself was, don't disturb the peace. So if there's an issue, just deal with it and you'll be all right. I've learned later in my life that no, if there's an issue and you stuff it down, you'll have a lot of issues later. You know what I mean? But that's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And if I fast forward to, I mean, we'll talk about this, but if I fast forward to later in my life, I was on stage on the verge of depression and having like a breakdown, 100% breakdown, because I just stuffed everything inside constantly. And I was, you know, in our culture, we're taught, especially in the African-American culture, you're taught that's a man, like just stuff all that stuff down and deal with it. You know what I mean? Suck it up.
Yeah.
But there comes a point where it takes more strength to be vulnerable than it does to stuff stuff down.
That's right.
And so I made the decision to be vulnerable and deal with me.